Most backyard gardeners are growing the same 5 things: tomatoes, courgettes, cucumbers, a pot of basil by the back door. Nothing wrong with any of it. But there's a smaller group of growers, people with similar-sized plots, similar tools, similar hours in the week, who made one different decision about what to put in the ground. And that decision changed what their garden was worth entirely. There are plants with established, growing buyer markets, herbal tea companies, supplement formulators, specialty spice importers, natural skincare brands actively searching for domestic supply they cannot reliably find. Most of those plants fit in a raised bed. Some fit in a single container. One crop on this list was researched by NASA as a serious food source for long-duration space missions. Most gardeners pull it out of their water features without a second thought. Another sells for up to £80 a pound in the right markets, grown from a patio pot, 10 crops. Some you may have grown before without knowing what they were worth. Some you've likely never considered. All of them can be started on a small plot. All of them have buyers already looking. The wrong garden. The default garden makes sense on the surface. You grow what you know, what's easy to find at the garden centre, what the people around you are growing. Tomatoes are reliable. Courgettes produce without much help. Basil smells good and goes with everything. But those crops also have something else in common. Everyone grows them. The market for them, at farmers' markets, through local buyers, in any kind of direct sale, is crowded. The price ceiling is low because supply never runs short. What most growers never stop to question is whether a different plant, something less familiar, something the buyer pool is actively underserved on, might make more sense for the space they already have. That's what this list is, not a get-rich-quick inventory. A considered look at 10 crops where demand is real, domestic supply is genuinely thin, and the grower who shows up with consistent quality has real pricing power. Lemon Balm. The calm crop with a quietly expanding market. Lemon Balm doesn't announce itself. It's low-growing, spreads without drama, and looks unremarkable in a border. Most people who grow it treat it as a pleasant filler, but dried lemon balm moves at £20 to £40 per pound through a buyer market that has grown consistently for several years and shows no sign of slowing. The driver is stress, chronic, modern, everywhere. People are looking for natural options with traditional credibility and some clinical backing. Lemon balm has both. Centuries of use, a growing body of research on anxiety and sleep, and an ingredient profile that wellness consumers recognize and trust. The buyers aren't just herbalists at a Sunday market. Herbal tea companies need consistent volume. Tincture makers are scaling. The domestic supply chain for quality lemon balm is genuinely thin, and it's a perennial, so you plant once and harvest for years. Fenugreek, the double market herb most growers walk past. Fenugreek sells for £15 to £30 per pound. The price is solid, but the more interesting thing about this crop is its structure. Most herbs serve one buyer type. Fenugreek serves 2 completely separate markets that don't move in sync with each other. The seeds are foundational in South Asian, Middle Eastern and East African cooking. That distinctive, almost maple bitterness that has no real substitute in certain spice blends and traditional breads. Restaurants, ethnic grocery chains and spice companies pay meaningfully more for quality domestic product with traceability than for imported bulk. The second market is the supplement industry. Fenugreek has credible research behind it for blood sugar support, hormone balance, and lactation support. 3 separate health categories with their own buyers. If the culinary side softens, the supplement demand is still there. Very few crops give you that kind of buffer against a single market shifting. The UK and US both import the overwhelming majority of their fenugreek. A domestic grower offering certified organic product is not competing on scale. They're competing on what the importer structurally cannot offer: ashwagandha. The adaptogen crop, still being almost entirely imported, ashwagandha root sells for £25 to £60 per pound. The adaptogen category, botanical supplements that support stress response and hormonal regulation, is worth hundreds of millions and still growing. Ashwagandha is consistently near the top of it. Almost all of it is still sourced from India. That's not a criticism. It's a market observation. Every pound of imported root is a pound a domestic grower could potentially be supplying, likely at a premium, to brands actively looking for organic certification, verifiable origin, and supply chain transparency. For a growing segment of wellness buyers, those aren't preferences, they're requirements. The detail that keeps this market accessible to new growers is the patience it demands. Ashwagandha root takes 18 months to 2 years to reach a full harvest. Most people assess that timeline and move on. The timeline does the selecting. Most growers won't commit to it, which is precisely why the margins are still there for those who will. Pair it with faster turnover crops while you wait. It becomes a background asset, quietly maturing. Stevia, the zero-calorie crop with a structural, not trend-driven market. Dried stevia leaf sells for £20 to £40 per pound. The demand behind it isn't a wellness trend. It's a generational shift in how people think about sugar, driven by diabetes rates, metabolic health awareness, and a mainstream consumer who wants sweetness without the artificial chemistry of alternatives. The white powder in packets is the wrong target for a small grower. That market runs on industrial-scale extraction and the margins are already compressed. The real opportunity is dried whole leaf for home brewing, craft herbal tea blends, and minimally processed cooking. That segment values the simplicity and authenticity of a whole plant product and pays a premium that bulk processors can't match because their model doesn't reach that buyer. Stevia grows reliably in greenhouse settings where outdoor winters are too harsh. A single well-managed greenhouse bed can supply several local tea shops or food co-ops on a recurring basis. That's the kind of relationship-based repeat revenue that makes a niche crop durable. Calendula, the skincare ingredient that most gardeners grow for free already. Dried calendula flowers sell for £20 to £50 per pound. The natural and clean beauty market has grown significantly over the past decade, and calendula sits near the centre of it. Documented anti-inflammatory properties, a visually striking colour that photographs well, and centuries of traditional use in wound healing and skin care. It checks every box a premium formulator wants on a label. What makes calendula genuinely interesting as a crop is the exit flexibility. You can sell wholesale by the pound to manufacturers who need consistent volume. You can sell smaller quantities to the growing community of small batch soap makers and independent skincare formulators, a buyer group that has expanded considerably with the rise of direct-to-consumer beauty brands. Or you can produce your own value-added product line, infused oils, dried flower packs, skincare kits. 3 revenue strategies from one crop at 3 different margin profiles. Post-harvest handling is what separates premium product from average. Careful, low-heat drying preserves colour and active compounds and positions you at the top end of that price range. There's still one crop left on this list I haven't mentioned yet, and it's the one that surprises people most every time. It has nothing to do with cooking. Catnip. The pet industry crop, hiding in plain sight. Premium organic catnip sells for £30 to £60 per pound. The industry buying it is worth billions and growing every year, and it has nothing to do with the kitchen or the medicine cabinet. Pet owners, specifically the segment driving growth in premium pet products, are the same people buying organic groceries and reading ingredient labels on their own supplements. They apply the same standard to what they buy for their animals, and what most of them don't know is that there is a significant quality gap in the catnip market. Commercial bulk catnip is largely stripped of potency, poorly dried, sometimes diluted with filler plant material. It's effectively inert. Freshly harvested, properly dried, high-potency catnip is a different product in the way that matters most. The cat actually responds to it. High-end pet boutiques, natural pet retailers, and direct-to-consumer subscription box companies know this difference and are actively looking for better supply. Most of them aren't finding it consistently. Catnip is a vigorous perennial, plant once, harvest for years. The sourcing gap is the opportunity. Tulsi, the sacred herb that crossed quietly into mainstream wellness. Tulsi holy basil sells for £20 to £45 per pound, dried. It has been a cornerstone of Ayurvedic practice for thousands of years, and that traditional base never went away. South Asian communities across the UK and North America represent stable, consistent demand that doesn't fluctuate with wellness trends. That foundation alone makes it worth considering. But the modern adaptogen movement brought an entirely new buyer alongside that base. Functional herbal teas, positioned around specific health outcomes like stress support, immune function, and cognitive clarity, are one of the strongest growth categories in the beverage industry right now. Tulsi is one of the headline ingredients in that category, not a supporting note in a blend, but the lead plant. Domestic supply is still meaningfully behind where demand already sits. Small growers supplying directly to regional tea blenders or wellness brands often find those buyers are actively seeking alternatives to overseas sourcing, not to cut costs, but because a verifiable origin and a specific farm story have become marketing assets in their own right. An overseas commodity supplier cannot offer that. A grower with 200 square feet and a clear process can. Duckweed. The NASA-researched plant most gardeners pull out of their ponds. This is the one. Duckweed, specifically Wolffia and Lemna species, are the fastest growing plants on the planet. Under the right conditions, they double their total biomass every 24 to 48 hours, not weekly, every 1 to 2 days. NASA studied duckweed as a protein source for long-duration space missions, not as a curiosity, as a serious candidate for closed-loop biological life support. Dried, it sells for £20 to £60 per pound. The reason that price holds is the nutritional profile. Duckweed runs 40 to 45% protein by dry weight. Soybeans, the global benchmark protein crop, sit around 35%. That gap has drawn serious attention from supplement companies, aquaculture operations, and animal feed researchers, all looking for high-protein, low-land impact plant material. The production model is unlike anything else on this list. You work in tanks or shallow ponds. A modest backyard setup running 4 or 5 containers, can produce harvestable yields on a weekly rotation. Space efficiency is extraordinary biomass yields per square foot that row crops cannot approach. Most gardeners pull duckweed out of their water features and throw it on the compost. Some are selling it. Moringa. The fast-growing tree some small growers are treating as infrastructure. Dried moringa leaf sells for £20 to £40 per pound. Demand has accelerated steadily, and domestic supply remains far behind where the market already sits. The nutritional density drove the initial surge: vitamins A, C and E, multiple minerals, plant protein in a bioavailable form. That profile translated directly into products: powder, capsules, tea, smoothie additions that now occupy real shelf space in health retailers. The brands selling those products are largely sourcing internationally because domestic supply hasn't materialized to meet them. What sets moringa apart as a crop is its growth behavior. The tree can reach 12 to 15 feet in its first growing year under the right conditions. Multiple leaf harvests per season are standard, and once established, it becomes a renewable production asset that requires less intervention over time. Not an annual you replant and manage every year. Infrastructure. Small growers in warmer climates are already selling directly to local supplement brands and wellness cafes, not at commodity import prices, but at a meaningful premium, because they can offer fresh dried product with a verifiable origin and a 2-day delivery window. No overseas supplier can match that. For a brand whose identity is built on transparency, proximity isn't a minor convenience. It's the difference between a supplier they tolerate and one they actively protect. Before we get to number one, the reason this last crop sits at the top isn't just the price, it's that nothing else does what it does. And the buyers who know it will tell you that plainly. Sichuan Pepper. The exotic spice with no substitute, selling for up to £80 a pound. Sichuan Pepper. Up to £80 per pound in premium markets. And the demand story is specific enough that it's worth understanding exactly. Sichuan cuisine has moved from a niche curiosity in Western food culture to a sustained culinary movement with real staying power. High-end restaurants, serious food media, and a generation of home cooks who take flavor seriously have all arrived at the same realization. There is no substitute for Sichuan pepper. The numbing, tingling sensation, what's called the mala effect, is produced by compounds called hydroxy-alpha-sanshool that interact with nerve receptors in a way that nothing else replicates. When a chef is building a dish around that experience, they pay for the real ingredient at the real price, because nothing else gets them there. The Xanthoxylum shrub is cold hardy, relatively drought-tolerant once established, and grows successfully across a wide range of temperate climates, including much of the UK and a substantial portion of North America. The barrier isn't geography, it's unfamiliarity. Here's what makes the timing significant. The aromatic compounds that produce the mala sensation are volatile. They degrade in transit and storage. Peppercorns that spent weeks in a shipping container are measurably less potent than product harvested and delivered domestically within days. A chef who has tasted the difference knows immediately, and they will pay the price difference without negotiation. Specialty spice companies, high-end restaurant suppliers, and direct-to-consumer spice subscription services are actively searching for domestic growers who can guarantee quality and consistency. Most of them are not finding what they need. Highest per-pound ceiling on this list, a flavor profile with no substitute, genuine and growing demand, and extremely limited domestic competition. The garden is a decision. Every plant on this list can be grown on a small footprint. Several can be started with equipment you already own. Most can be launched alongside whatever you're currently growing without replacing it, while you learn the crop and locate your buyers. The commodity garden competes on volume. More plants, lower costs, faster throughput. On a small plot, that game is very hard to win. These crops compete on something different: knowledge, quality, and the kind of direct buyer relationship that makes consistent pricing possible regardless of what the broader market is doing. A 200 square foot bed growing the right crop, dried and handled correctly, sold directly to the right buyer, can outperform a much larger plot growing what everyone else is growing. Not because of luck, because of information and the decision about what to plant. The window is open right now for most of these crops. Domestic supply is still thin, buyers are still searching. That won't be the case indefinitely. If you want to understand the next piece of this, not just which plants, but how to actually put the first one in the ground, that's exactly what the next video covers. Starting from nothing, no specialist equipment, no experience with unusual crops. Just the first steps that matter. One question before you go: of everything on this list, considering your space, your climate, and how quickly you want to see any kind of return, which one actually makes sense for where you are right now? Drop it in the comments. That's where the most useful conversation on this channel tends to happen. If this gave you something to think about, the subscribe button is there. There's more coming, and the next one picks up exactly where this leaves off.